The sky above Hive Tertius tears open like a wound, not with the familiar corruption of the warp, not with the screaming madness of chaos. This is different. A single figure descends through the ash-choked atmosphere, cutting through the smoke of 1,000 factory fires like a missile of flesh and bone. He wears no power armor, carries no bolter. His cape, red as fresh blood, ripples behind him as he lands on the battlefield with enough force to crack the rockcrete beneath his boots. Imperial guardsmen freeze mid-charge, their lasguns suddenly feeling like toys in their trembling hands. Space Marines pivot their helmets toward this newcomer, tactical displays screaming warnings they don't understand. And Homelander smiles, that perfect terrifying smile that promises salvation and delivers only death. The first guardsman to raise his lasgun never gets to pull the trigger. Heat vision lances across the battlefield, two beams of superheated light that cut through flak armor like it's paper. Bodies don't just fall, they evaporate in the middle, top and bottom halves hitting the ground separately. The screaming starts immediately, not from the dying, but from those who witness it and realize they're next. Homelander doesn't rush, he floats 3 feet off the ground, surveying the carnage around him with the casual interest of someone examining insects. Orc corpses litter the battlefield, green blood mixing with human red in toxic rivers. A Chimera transport burns nearby, its crew roasting inside. This is Tuesday for the Imperium of Man, but Homelander has just made it so much worse. If you want to witness more tales of grimdark horror and impossible power clashing with the galaxy's cruelest empire, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about strength in the 41st millennium. The comment section is yours. Tell me how you think this ends, because I guarantee you won't see it coming. Sergeant Matthias Cord has seen 30 years of war. He's watched friends liquefied by orc shooters, seen commissars execute cowards, survived 3 different daemon incursions. He thought he'd witnessed every horror the galaxy could offer. But as this floating man in blue and red cuts through his platoon like a farmer harvesting wheat, Matthias feels something he hasn't experienced in decades: pure absolute terror. The stranger moves with impossible grace, each gesture deliberate and economical. A casual wave of his hand sends 3 guardsmen flying into a ruined wall hard enough to paint it red. Another blast of those crimson eyes melts through an entire firing line, las beams deflecting harmlessly off skin that should be flesh but acts like ceramite. Matthias drops his lasgun. For the first time in his career, he drops his weapon and runs. The Astartes respond with typical efficiency. Brother Sergeant Demetrian of the Crimson Fists has killed Xenos warlords and heretic champions across a dozen systems. His centuries of experience scream at him that this is a threat beyond conventional understanding. He signals his squad with quick hand gestures: surround and suppress. Bolters bark in unison, mass reactive shells designed to penetrate armor and explode inside targets. The sound is deafening, a thunderous symphony of the Imperium's wrath, except the shells never reach their target. Homelander moves faster than even Astartes' reflexes can track, weaving between explosive rounds with supernatural agility. One bolt round he catches mid-flight, examining it with curious blue eyes before crushing it in his palm. The shell detonates, shredding his hand into nothing. Not even a scratch. The skin doesn't burn, doesn't break, it simply remains perfect. Brother Demetrian processes this impossibility in microseconds. His tactical doctrine has no reference for invulnerable enemies. Even greater daemons can be wounded. Even Terranid biotitans eventually fall to sustained fire. But this is something else entirely. He switches Vox channels, his voice cutting through the chaos with practiced calm. Command, this is Sergeant Demetrian. We have encountered an unknown hostile entity. Classification impossible. Requesting immediate support from. The Vox dies. Every communication device on the battlefield goes silent simultaneously. Homelander floats closer, close enough that Demetrian can see his reflection in those cold, terrifyingly human eyes. And in that moment, the Space Marine understands something that shakes him to his gene-forged core. This isn't a daemon. This isn't Xenos. This is something wearing the shape of a man. Hollow where a soul should be. The fighting stops, not because the battle is over, but because everyone, guardsmen Astartes, even the few surviving orcs, realizes simultaneously that the rules have changed. Homelander hangs in the air above the killing field, his cape snapping in the wind, surveying his work with evident satisfaction. Below him, the dead number in the hundreds, Imperials who came here to die for the Emperor, now simply dead for nothing. He speaks then, and his voice carries across the battlefield without shouting, amplified by lungs that can project across continents. I'm Homelander, and I'm here to help. 4 words that send ice down the spine of every survivor. Because they've all heard that phrase before, whispered in the dark histories of the Imperium. False prophets, fallen heroes, corrupt governors, they all said they came to help. They all smiled just like that. Matthias Cord huddles in a crater, his hands pressed against his ears, as if that could block out what he's witnessed. The sergeant's mind races through decades of Imperial doctrine, searching desperately for context. Is this a new xenospecies? Some weapon from the dark age of technology? A manifestation of the Emperor's wrath? None of it fits, none of it makes sense, and that's the most terrifying part. The Imperium has classifications for everything. Even horror has its proper categories, its assigned threat levels, its approved response protocols. But this floating man in blue who kills with his eyes and smiles while doing it, there's no manual for this, no tactical doctrine, no prayer that offers comfort. Matthias realizes with crushing certainty that whatever this thing is, it's about to teach the Imperium a lesson in helplessness, and the galaxy will burn learning it. Word travels fast in the Imperium, even when every Vox channel screams static. Astropathic choirs across 3 sectors suddenly convulse in unison, their psychic screams tearing through the warp with a message that defies translation. Something impossible has entered the Materium. Something that registers as neither daemon nor mortal, neither Xenos nor machine. The Inquisition's monitoring stations light up like a cityscape at night, their cogitator arrays struggling to process the data flooding in from Hive Tertius. In the Gothic Sector Command Center, Lord Inquisitor Covenant stands before a flickering hololithic display, showing grainy footage of the incident. He watches a man in blue and red obliterate an entire Imperial platoon in 17 seconds. The footage loops 3 times before Covenant speaks, his voice carrying the weight of someone who has stared into the eye of terror and returned sane. Mobilize everything, and pray we're enough. Homelander doesn't wait for their response. He's already moving to the next engagement, drawn by the sound of battle like a moth to flame. 20 miles north, an Imperial Guard regiment is pinned down by a massive orc waz, greenskins pouring through breached hive walls in a tide of violence and fungal enthusiasm. The guardsmen are dying by the hundreds, their defensive line crumbling under the sheer momentum of the Xenos assault. Then the sky darkens, not with storm clouds or orbital bombardment, but with a single descending figure. Homelander lands in the center of the orc horde with the force of an artillery shell, the shock wave alone pulping a dozen greenskins. The orcs bless their simple minds. Don't run, they charge. It's the last decision most of them ever make. Heat vision sweeps across the horde in broad, devastating arcs, superheating metal and boiling flesh instantaneously. The orc warboss, a massive brute named Grogfang, who has crushed space marines with his bare hands, roars a challenge and charges forward. His power claw crackles with unstable energy, capable of tearing through tank armor. He swings with enough force to decapitate a dreadnought. Homelander catches the claw mid-swing with one hand. The energy field surrounding the weapon sputters and dies, unable to process what it's touching. For a moment, Warboss and Superhuman lock eyes. The orc sees no fear there, no respect for his strength, no acknowledgement that he's a threat, just cold, absolute dismissal. Homelander squeezes. The power claw crumples like tin foil, servos and hydraulics bursting in sprays of oil. Then he squeezes harder. Grogfang's entire arm collapses, bones shattering up to the shoulder. The warboss has time for one confused grunt before heat vision reduces his head to superheated vapor. The remaining orcs break. It's unprecedented. Greenskins don't retreat. Their biology literally prevents complex fear responses. But whatever instinct drove them to fight has been overwritten by something deeper, something primal that transcends even their genetic programming. They scatter like roaches exposed to light, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. Homelander lets them run. He's already lost interest, his attention turning to the Imperial Guardsmen emerging from their fortifications. They approach cautiously, weapons lowered but ready, eyes wide with shock and something that might be gratitude. Their commanding officer, a captain with a face scarred by shrapnel, steps forward and snaps a crisp salute. "Sir, we don't know who you are, but you saved our lives. The Emperor's grace brought you to." Homelander cuts him off with a raised hand. "I don't work for your Emperor. I work for me." The silence that follows could crush diamonds. "You don't speak those words." Heresy of the highest order, the kind that gets entire planets subjected to exterminate us. But the captain sees the bodies littering the battlefield, sees the power radiating from this stranger like heat from a sun, and makes a calculation. He swallows whatever indoctrination wants him to say, and nods slowly. "Of course, sir. Whatever you need, we're here to assist." Homelander's smile widens. It's the smile of someone who has just confirmed what he already knew. Power makes its own rules. He gestures broadly at the devastated hive. "I need you to tell everyone what happened here. Tell them Homelander saved you. Tell them I'm the strongest there is. Can you do that?" The captain nods again, more vigorously this time. Behind him, his soldiers exchange glances, their expressions a mixture of awe, fear, and dawning religious fervor. In the Imperium, where the Emperor is the only divine figure allowed worship, New faiths emerge in whispers and shadows. But this is different. They watched this man, if he is a man, do what entire companies of Astartes struggle to accomplish. They saw him murder physics itself, saw him move faster than thought and strike harder than artillery. Some of them are already thinking the forbidden thoughts, already wondering if maybe, just maybe, the Emperor sent them a new saint, a new champion. They don't understand yet what they've invited into their galaxy. They don't understand that Homelander doesn't save people, he collects them. And the Imperium, with its billions of desperate faithful souls, is the greatest collection he's ever encountered. News of the Angel of Tertius spreads through the hive like wildfire through Promethean-soaked ruins. Within hours the ecclesiarchy is scrambling to contain the narrative, but it's too late. Civilians who have spent their entire lives suffering under grinding poverty and endless war suddenly have something new to believe in. They've seen the picked captures, heard the survivor testimonies, witnessed the impossible. The local ministorum priests try to preach that this is merely the Emperor's will manifesting through a chosen servant, but even they sound uncertain. In the lower hive levels, where desperation breeds innovation, crude shrines begin appearing. Spray-painted images of a man in blue and red, arms outstretched like an ancient savior. The Inquisition's agents move to suppress this heretical worship, but there's too many sources, too much genuine belief. For the first time in millennia, something is competing with the imperial cult for hearts and minds. And Homelander, he watches from above, floating high over the hive where the air is thin and cold. His enhanced hearing picks up every prayer, every desperate plea sent in his direction. Back in his world, Vought manufactured his approval ratings, scripted his responses, controlled his image. Here they worship him because they want to, because they need to, because in the grim darkness of the far future, he's the only light some of them have ever seen. It should feel hollow, this unearned devotion. It should feel wrong. Instead it feels like vindication, like destiny.
He closes his eyes and listens to millions of voices calling his name, each one adding to the intoxicating chorus of relevance. In his old world, he was a product. In Warhammer 40k, he's becoming a god, and that terrifies anyone with enough sense to understand what's coming, because gods in this universe don't save people, they devour them.
The Crimson Fist's chapter monastery receives the distress signal 36 hours after Homelander's arrival. Chapter Master Alessio Cortez reviews the tactical data with growing concern, his centuries of experience cataloging threats failing to find precedent for this anomaly. The footage shows capabilities that defy every known classification, durability exceeding Terminator armor, speed rivaling Eldar aspect warriors, destructive output matching plasma weaponry. But it's the psychological profile that disturbs him most. The subject displays clear signs of narcissistic pathology, craves adoration, and operates without any discernible moral framework beyond self-gratification. In other words, he's exactly the kind of false prophet that has torn apart entire sectors when left unchecked. Cortez issues his orders with grim finality. Deploy 3 full tactical squads, 1 assault squad, and a dreadnought. Not to negotiate, not to observe, to eliminate with extreme prejudice. The Imperium has no room for competitors to the Emperor's throne.
You are Brother Castus of the Crimson Fists, and you have never felt doubt before today. Your indoctrination was thorough, your faith absolute, your gene seed pure. You have stormed Daemon worlds, and walked through firestorms that would vaporize mortals. But as your drop pod screams through Hive Turks' atmosphere, your enhanced hearing picks up the chants rising from the city below. They're not calling for the Emperor, they're calling for the Emperor. They're calling for him, Homelander. The name tastes like poison on your tongue, each syllable a corruption of everything you've sworn to protect. Your squad leader, Sergeant Davos, speaks through the box with his usual unshakable confidence. Brothers we face another, speaks through the box with his usual unshakable confidence. Brothers we face an enemy who has deceived the faithful. We will remind them who their true protector is. The words should comfort you. Instead you think about the footage, about how those heat beams cut through power armor like it was cloth, about how those heat beams cut through power armor like it was cloth, about how your bolter might be utterly useless. The Astartes deploy in perfect formation across the Hive Central Plaza, the killing ground they've chosen deliberately. Wide open space, multiple firing lanes. Wide open space, multiple firing lanes. Nowhere for the target to take cover. 50 Space Marines form a semicircle. Bolters aimed at the sky where their orders parades track Homelander's approach. He doesn't try to hide, doesn't attempt tactical maneuvering. He simply descends straight down, landing at the center of their formation with his arms crossed and that infuriating smile plastered across his face. 50 against 1, he says, loud enough for Adrian from Steely to hear. Finally a fierce round, he says, loud enough for every enhanced ear to hear. Finally a fair fight. Sergeant Davis steps forward, his voice projected through his helmet's box speakers. By the authority of the God and core of mankind, you are declared a premeditated dictatoress. You have one chance to surrender and face the yoke that hates you. You have one chance to surrender and face the Inquisition's judgment. It's not a theatrical villain laugh, it's genuine amusement. The sound of someone filming who finds the entire situation absurdly funny. The first volley comes without warning, 50 bolters firing and 50 bolters firing and 50 bolters firing in synchronized precision. Mass reactive shells converging on stringent pointing on a single point. The noise is apocalyptic, each shell capable of blowing apart concrete bunkers. The plaza disappears in smoke and fire and explosive devastation. For 3 full seconds they maintain sustained fire for Imperium Station. For 3 full seconds they maintain sustained fire for pouring thousands of rounds into kill zone. Then Davis raises his fist as the shooting stops. Smoke clears slowly, revealing Homelander standing extended exactly where he was. His suit not even dirty. He brushes some dust off his shoulder with exaggerated care. My turn, he asks. God's foot falls isn't a balance. It's an execution. Heat vision sweeps across the plaza in a continuous beam cutting through Surinite armor like it's made of wax. Space Marines, gene-forged warriors who have fought for centuries, die screaming. Third warriors who have fought for centuries, die screaming. As screaming as their armor becomes their coffin when the light inside their own blood deep. Brother Castus watches Sergeant Davis try to charge forward, his chainsword roaring. Says he reached faceless for grabbing the sergeant by the sergeant got his helmet and lifting him off the ground effortlessly. Do you know what I love about you guys? Homelander says conversationally, as if he's not currently holding a struggling space marine like a child holds the toy. You actually believe you're special. Gene-forged and polished and enhanced, those genes were regular humans, but you're still just needing a cane. Give it to regular humans, but you're still just needing a cane. He squeezes, the helmet conquers inward with a cylinder collects in metal. When Sergeant Davis goes limp, Homelander tosses the body aside. The body spins his face the remaining sturgeons.
They're already falling back to tactical doctrine, overriding their natural aggression because continuing to engage with the sources. Brother Castus follows his Volta as he retreats. Knowledge is useless, knowledge useless, but unable to stop himself. Each trigger calls a prayer to the Emperor. Each wasted round and Eclipse flickered faith. The bolts pin harmlessly off Homelander's chest. He doesn't even flinch. He just watches them run with that same amused smile. He doesn't even flinch. He just watches them run with that same amused smile, like a cat watching mice scatter. Ancient Napoleons, the venerable dreadnought who has fought for 8 centuries, advances when the tactical sports fall back. His assault cannon spins up at a mechanical barrage, firing hundreds of rounds per second. Bolter cannon fire joins the barrage. Explosive rounds descends to penetrate tank armor. For a moment, just a moment, it seems like it might hurt. The sheer volume of fire forces Homelander to brace himself and face himself. His feet digging furrows in the rock crevice, his face starts his statement. Then he stops retreating. He leans forward into the storm of fire and begins walking. Each step is deliberate, confident, inevitable. The dreadnought's weapons overheat barrels for all his own reckless sustained fire. Homelander reaches the ancient war machine for sustained fire. Homelander reaches the ancient war machine and places both hands on its adamantine untainted heart. Your top 3 at least, and there's almost respect in his voice. Almost. Then he lifts. The dreadnought weighs 15 tons. Homelander raises 15 tons. Homelander raises it over his head like it's empty. Empty bag, force it through a high-guard wall. The remaining Space Marines loop 3 blocks away. Their numbers reduced by more than half. Father Castus can feel his brother's emotions bleeding through the vault's rage, disbelief in something that's deeper than something that trains never to experience. Not fear of death. They've all died 1,000 times in simulation and training. Fear of irrelevance. Fear that their Gen Force superiority means nothing. Superiority means nothing against this impossible enemy. Captain Master Cortez floors his voice cuts through the vault's chatter, transmitted from orbit with crystal clarity. All units fall back to its strength levels. This is not a retreat. This is a tactical reassessment. The words taste like ashes in Brother Castus's mouth. In 2 centuries of service. He's never Castus's mouth. In 2 centuries of service. He has never heard his Captain Master order a withdrawal, but he obeys because he's still a Space Marine. Because discipline is all the distractions, all the distractions, all the attachments, all the flashbacks. Homelander floats above the conscious holding the conscious form. Homelander floats above the conscious holding form of fleet including his 30 armor, including bodies. His teeth billowing in the wind like a banner of conquest. The Imperium has fought gods before. They've battled demon primates and constant half tyrants. Faced down necro overlords and now they're battling hardest ever. They've held the line against impossible odds.
For 10,000 years, through faith, firepower, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. But those enemies follow rules, operate within understood parameters of physics and metaphysics. Homelander doesn't. He's not powered by the warp, so psychers can't touch him. He's not technological, so the Mechanicus can't analyze him. He's not divine, so faith holds no sway. He's simply impossibly, indestructibly powerful. And as the sun sets on Hive Tertius, casting long shadows across streets littered with fallen angels, one truth becomes inescapable. The Imperium just learned that all their weapons, all their warriors, all their 10 millennia of military doctrine mean nothing against an enemy who cannot be hurt. And Homelander learned something too. He learned that in Warhammer 40k, power doesn't just speak, It reigns absolutely, and he's only just begun his reign. Lord Inquisitor Covenant doesn't sleep. He hasn't slept since the first reports arrived, since he watched footage of Space Marines, the Emperor's finest, being slaughtered like guardsmen. His private chambers aboard the inquisitorial black ship Absolute Resolve have become a war room, hololithic displays covering every surface with tactical data, psychic readings, and increasingly desperate casualty reports. Covenant is 300 years old, augmented with juvenate treatments and cybernetic enhancements that have kept him functional long past natural human limits. He's condemned entire worlds to death, sanctioned exterminatus protocols on planets with billions of souls, all in service to humanity's survival. But as he watches Homelander's recorded movements, tracking his pattern of intervention and destruction, the Inquisitor feels something he thought he'd burned out of himself decades ago: uncertainty. Because every tool in the Imperium's arsenal has failed, and the thing wearing a man's face is still smiling. The Inquisitorial Conclave convenes in the ship's sanctum, a chamber lined with psychic shielding and null field generators. 12 Inquisitors from various ordos gather in person, or via hololith, their combined authority capable of mobilizing entire battle fleets. Inquisitor Helmar of the Ordo Malleus speaks first, her voice carrying the weight of someone who has banished greater daemons. We must consider the possibility of daemonic possession, or warp corruption. No mortal should possess such power. Covenant shakes his head slowly. Our telepaths have scanned him from orbit. He registers as completely human, frighteningly so. No warp presence, no psychic signature, no taint of chaos. He's exactly what he appears to be, a human with impossible abilities. Another Inquisitor, Thaddeus of the Ordo Xenos, leans forward. Then he's some kind of Xenos bioweapon, a genetic experiment designed to Covenant cuts him off. He's not Xenos, he's us. That's what makes him so dangerous. The hololithic display shifts, showing crowds gathering in Hive Tertius's lower levels. Thousands of civilians, their faces gaunt from malnutrition and industrial pollution, holding crude banners bearing Homelander's symbol. They're not rioting, they're not rebelling, they're worshipping. Covenant magnifies the image, zooming in on a makeshift shrine, where citizens have brought offerings, ration packs, personal trinkets, handwritten prayers. An elderly woman kneels before a spray-painted image of the flying man, tears streaming down her weathered face as she mouths words of devotion. This is the real threat, Covenant says quietly. He's not just powerful, he's becoming their alternative to the Emperor. In a week he's accomplished what Chaos cults spend decades trying to achieve. He's made them doubt. The other Inquisitors shift uncomfortably. Heresy can be purged with fire, rebellion can be crushed with force, but genuine faith in a false god, that requires something far more dangerous: precision. Inquisitor Covenant has a plan, but it requires resources that make even his fellow Inquisitors uncomfortable. He's requisitioning a full company of Grey Knights, the daemon-hunting Space Marines, whose existence is officially denied. He's requesting cooperation from the Officio Assassinorum, specifically their most esoteric operatives. He's even, and this part makes his stomach turn, considering opening channels to radical Inquisitors, who dabble in powers better left sealed. The logic is brutal but sound. If conventional force cannot stop Homelander, then unconventional force must be employed. The Grey Knights operate with psychic augmented weaponry, force weapons that can harm entities immune to physical damage. The assassins possess exotic munitions, viral strains that can kill anything biological, molecular disintegration fields, temporal anomalies. Combined with strategic manipulation of Homelander's own psychology, they might have a chance. The cost will be horrific, but the alternative is watching the Imperium fracture around a false messiah. You are Interrogator Saline Jr., aide to Lord Inquisitor Covenant, and you've been ordered to compile a psychological profile on the target. You've spent 14 hours reviewing every recorded interaction, every witness statement, every fragment of data available. What you've discovered makes your blood run cold. Homelander operates on pure narcissism. He needs adoration like humans need oxygen. Every action, every rescue, every display of power is performed for an audience. Back in his original universe, corporate handlers kept him controlled through manufactured approval ratings and careful image management. Here, with no vault to restrain him, he's being fed pure unfiltered worship from billions of desperate souls. He's an addict who just discovered an unlimited supply of his drug of choice. And addicts, when their supply is threatened, become monstrously unpredictable. You write in your report, subject must be separated from his audience. Deny him worship, and he may become vulnerable to manipulation. The first assassination attempt comes 3 days later. A Calidus assassin, polymorphine, altered to appear as a civilian child, approaches Homelander during one of his increasingly frequent public appearances. He's taken to landing in crowded plazas, soaking in the adoration of thousands. The child stumbles, falls at his feet, and when Homelander bends down with that practiced smile to help her up, she triggers the digital weapon implanted in her palm. It's a molecular disruptor, technology salvaged from the Dark Age, capable of unraveling atomic bonds. The weapon fires point blank into Homelander's face. For one frozen moment, everyone watching thinks it worked. Then Homelander straightens up, brushing invisible dust from his suit. The child, the assassin, stares in pure disbelief as her weapon arm disintegrates, the molecular disruptor overloading from the impossible feedback. Homelander's expression shifts from surprise to something darker. Did you really think that would work? He grabs the assassin by the throat, lifting her effortlessly as her polymorphine form begins to fail, revealing the augmented killer beneath. The crowd watches in stunned silence as Homelander holds the assassin aloft, her legs kicking uselessly. "Someone sent you," he says, and his voice carries across the plaza like judgment itself. "Someone wants me dead. That's fine, I get it. I'm changing things, and change scares people. But here's what's going to happen now." His grip tightens, and the assassin's struggles become more desperate. "I'm going to find whoever sent you. I'm going to find everyone who thinks they can stop me, and I'm going to show them exactly why that's impossible." Heat vision flares, and the assassin's body becomes ash, scattering on the wind like dark snow. The crowd recoils in horror, but Homelander's hearing picks up something else beneath their fear: excitement, vindication, the whispers that say he's not just powerful, he's wrathful against his enemies. He's taking on the shape they need him to take, not a hero, a god of vengeance.
Aboard the Absolute Resolve, Covenant receives the report of the assassin's failure with grim resignation. The Grey Knights are en route, their arrival expected within 48 hours. The Adeptus Mechanicus has provided some esoteric weapons that might bypass his apparent invulnerability. But as Covenant studies the latest footage, watching Homelander address a crowd of thousands with the confidence of someone who knows he's untouchable, the Inquisitor realizes something that chills him more than any Daemon encounter. They're not fighting an enemy, they're fighting an idea. Every attack that fails makes Homelander seem more invincible. Every Imperial force that falls makes the Imperium seem weaker. And in a galaxy where faith determines reality, where belief can literally manifest gods, Homelander is being fed enough worship to become something far worse than a powerful human. He's becoming what people believe he is: unstoppable, divine, inevitable. And the worst part, Covenant has no idea how to kill an idea. You can't shoot faith. You can't bomb devotion. All you can do is watch it spread like a virus through a population that's been waiting their entire lives for something worth believing in beyond endless, grinding suffering. The Grey Knights descend like silver lightning. Their strike cruiser Sanctity's Edge breaks orbit above Hive Tertius, without announcement, without warning, appearing from the warp with the precision of a surgeon's blade. These are not ordinary space marines. These are the Emperor's Daemon hunters. Each one a psyker, each one trained from childhood to battle horrors that would break mortal minds. Their armor gleams with psychic wards and blessed silver, their nemesis force weapons crackling with Imperial energy capable of banishing even greater daemons. Brother Captain Arvon leads the strike force, 10 Terminators clad in Aegis armor, weapons that have slain daemon princes and bound sorcerers. He has walked through the warp itself and returned with his sanity intact. He has banished entities whose names cannot be spoken, and as he reviews the tactical data on this Homelander, he feels something unexpected, not fear, anticipation. Finally, a challenge worthy of the Grey Knight's attention. They choose their battlefield carefully. The Sanctorum Cathedral in Hive Tertius's upper levels, a massive structure dedicated to the Imperial cult. Arvon's logic is sound. If this false prophet wants worship, then confronting him in the heart of true faith will test his resolve. The Grey Knights deploy at dawn, their psychic presence announced like a clarion call across the immaterium. Every psyker within 100 kilometers feels it, a wave of absolute certainty.
Holy purpose so pure, it burns to perceive. Homelander feels it too, though he doesn't understand what he's sensing. Just a sudden pressure in his head, a discomfort he's never experienced before. He floats toward the cathedral with curiosity more than concern, drawn by the challenge implicit in such a blatant display. When he arrives, he finds 10 silver giants waiting in perfect formation, their weapons aimed directly at him. Finally, he says, grinning, "Somebody who actually looks dangerous." Brother Captain Arvan doesn't waste word. "In the name of the God Emperor, you are deemed excommunicate, traitorous, and a clear and present threat to humanity. You will be destroyed." His voice resonates with psychic authority, the words themselves weapons designed to cow lesser beings. Homelander just laughs. "Yeah, I've heard that speech before. It didn't go well for the last guys." The Grey Knights don't charge. They advance with measured precision, their psychic hoods glowing as they channel the warp through their considerable discipline. Arvan's nemesis Force halberd ignites with silver fire, not mere flame but psychic energy given form. When Force weapons strike, they don't just cut flesh, they annihilate the essence of what they touch, unraveling both matter and spirit. These weapons have ended Daemon princes. Arvan intends to test whether they can end whatever Homelander truly is. The first strike comes faster than mortal eyes can follow. The blessed blade aimed directly at Homelander's heart. The halberd connects. Silver psychic fire explodes across Homelander's chest in a cascade of otherworldly energy. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Homelander feels something. Not pain exactly, but sensation, pressure. The recognition that something just hit him with enough force to matter. He looks down at his chest where the blade made contact. His suit is scorched, the fabric burned away to reveal skin underneath. Skin that's reddened, not cut, not bleeding, but definitely affected. Homelander's eyes widen, not with fear but with shock. "You actually hurt me," he says, and there's genuine surprise in his voice. Arvan doesn't respond with words. He presses the attack, his Terminator armor's servos whining as he moves with speed that shouldn't be possible for something so massive. The other Grey Knights join the assault, their Force weapons weaving a net of psychic death designed to overwhelm through coordinated strikes. What follows is the most intense combat Hive Tertius has ever witnessed. The Grey Knights fight with centuries of experience and absolute faith, their movements synchronized through psychic battle cant. Force swords, halberds and hammers rain blows on Homelander from multiple angles simultaneously. Each strike generates explosions of silver fire, psychic energy discharge that cracks the cathedral's stone floor and shatters stained glass windows. Homelander moves between them like water, his speed still superior, but for the first time he's being forced to defend. A Force hammer catches him in the ribs, sending him crashing through a marble pillar. He emerges snarling, heat vision lancing out in retaliation. The beams strike a Grey Knight's storm shield, and for a moment the psychic barrier holds, ancient wards battling impossible physics. Then the shield shatters and the knight behind it burns. But he bought his brother's precious seconds, and in combat between beings of this caliber, seconds mean everything. Brother Captain Arvan realizes something crucial during the engagement. Homelander fights like someone who's never had to. His movements are efficient but lack true martial discipline. He relies on overwhelming power because he's never needed technique. The Grey Knights, by contrast, have spent lifetimes perfecting the art of killing things that shouldn't be killable. Arvan modulates his psychic output, channeling the warp through his halberd in measured bursts. He's not trying to overpower Homelander anymore. He's learning, testing, finding the frequency at which psychic energy affects this impossible body. Another strike connects, this time across Homelander's arm. The skin splits slightly, a hairline cut that weeps a single drop of blood. It's microscopic damage, barely an injury, but it's damage. Homelander stares at the blood on his arm like it's alien, like he's forgotten such things are possible. Then his expression shifts from shock to rage, pure, incandescent fury that someone made him bleed. The cathedral explodes, not from any weapon, but from Homelander's scream. A sonic blast of pure frustration amplified by lungs that can shout across continents. Stone walls crack, support columns shatter, and the entire structure begins its death collapse. Homelander unleashes everything, heat vision sweeping in broad arcs while he moves at speeds that blur reality. 3 more Grey Knights fall, their blessed armor no protection against sustained exposure to that burning gaze. Brother Captain Arvan orders a tactical withdrawal, his strategic mind calculating that they've achieved their objective. They've proven Homelander can be hurt. That means he can be killed. The remaining Grey Knights teleport out via their librarian psychic powers, disappearing in flashes of silver light just as the cathedral's roof caves in. Homelander floats in the center of the destruction, breathing hard, his perfect suit torn and scorched, a thin line of blood still visible on his arm. He looks at the blood, then at the ruins around him, and for the first time since arriving in Warhammer 40k, Homelander feels something he hasn't felt in years: vulnerability. The footage spreads instantly. Pick captures of the battle, grainy and incomplete but undeniable. Homelander fighting desperately against Silver Warriors. Homelander bleeding. It's only a drop, barely visible in the recordings, but the believers see it. The faithful notice, and in the lower hive levels, in the desperate crowds that have begun to worship him, doubt creeps in like frost. Because gods don't bleed, heroes don't struggle. If Homelander is truly invincible, truly divine, why did he need to destroy an entire cathedral to survive? Why did he look scared? The ecclesiarchy seizes on this immediately, their priests broadcasting sermons that emphasize the Emperor's true invincibility, his eternal nature, his 10,000 years of unwavering protection. Homelander's cult doesn't collapse. Faith isn't that fragile, but it fractures. Some followers become more fanatical, explaining away the evidence as imperial propaganda. Others quietly remove their crude shrines, their belief shaken, and Homelander, floating high above the hive where nobody can see his expression, realizes something that terrifies him more than any opponent. In this universe, he's not special. He's just another powerful thing. And there are forces here that know how to kill powerful things. Homelander doesn't sleep, but he spends the night hovering in the void between hive spires, staring at the thin line on his arm where the Grey Knight's blade cut him. It's already healed. His regeneration is still functionally instantaneous, but the memory remains. The sensation of being hurt, the shock of seeing his own blood. In his original world, he was the apex predator, the unkillable god walking among insects. Here he's discovered that there are bigger predators. That realization should humble him, should make him cautious. Instead it ignites something far more dangerous: rage, pure, all-consuming narcissistic rage at a universe that dares suggest he's not special. If being a hero won't make them worship him absolutely, if being their savior still leaves room for doubt, then he'll try a different approach. He'll make them worship him through fear, because fear, unlike love, doesn't require him to earn anything. The shift happens overnight, but its effects are immediate. When Homelander descends into Hive Tertius's administrative sector the next morning, he doesn't land gently. He crashes through the roof of the planetary governor's palace, a statement of intent written in shattered marble and screaming guards. Governor Marcellus is a typical imperial bureaucrat, corpulent from decades of corruption, surrounded by advisors and toadies, completely unprepared for a flying man to literally drop into his throne room.
Homelander doesn't bother with introductions. He grabs the governor by his elaborate robes, lifting him off his ornate throne like a child picking up a doll. "Here's how things are going to work now," Homelander says, his voice carrying to every corner of the palace through sheer projection. "I'm in charge, not the Emperor, not the Imperium. Me. You're going to tell everyone that I'm their new authority. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can come discuss it with me personally." Governor Marcellus, to his credit, tries to maintain some dignity. The Imperium has stood for 10,000 years. One man, no matter how powerful, cannot. Heat vision flares, not at the governor, but at the throne behind him. The ancient seat of planetary authority, carved from a single block of obsidian and inscribed with prayers to the Emperor, melts into slag. Homelander leans in close, his breath hot against the governor's face. 10,000 years is impressive, but I can end your life in 1 second. So let me ask again, who's in charge? The governor's bladder fails. In front of his entire court, in front of the picked recorders broadcasting this scene across the hive, the planetary governor of Tertius pisses himself and whispers the only answer that will keep him alive. You're in charge." Homelander drops him, turns to the terrified court, and smiles that perfect terrible smile. "Glad we could reach an understanding." The news spreads like wildfire through Promethean-soaked ruins. Homelander has declared himself the planetary authority, superseding imperial governance. The reaction is immediate and polarized. In the lower hives, where suffering is measured in generations and hope is a luxury nobody can afford, many see this as liberation. The Imperium's bureaucracy has given them nothing but taxes, conscription, and early death. Maybe this powerful newcomer will be different. Maybe his rule will bring change. It's naive thinking, the desperation of the oppressed grasping at any alternative to their current misery. But in the upper hives, among the merchant guilds and administrative officials who profit from the current system, panic sets in. Without imperial authority, their positions become meaningless. Their accumulated power, their carefully hoarded wealth, all of it depends on maintaining the status quo, and Homelander is...
You are Factorum Director Hellstrom, and you've spent 40 years climbing the administrative hierarchy through careful political maneuvering and strategic bribes. Your wealth could buy entire continents on agri-worlds. Your influence reaches across sectors, and now in the span of one morning, it's all become worthless because some flying psychopath has decided he's in charge. You convene an emergency meeting of the planetary elite, 30 men and women who collectively control Tertius's economy. The plan is desperate but necessary. Pool resources to hire off-world mercenaries, contact the Inquisition directly, maybe even reach out to rogue traders with access to exotic weapons. Someone suggests contacting Chaos Forces, trading one tyrant for another. You dismiss that immediately. There are lines even desperation won't let you cross. The meeting lasts 4 hours, plans forming and reforming as you try to find leverage against someone who has no weaknesses. Then the skylight explodes inward, and Homelander descends into your secret meeting like judgment itself. You know what I love about this universe? Homelander says conversationally, landing in the center of the conference table and scattering data pads and drinks. People here are so used to surveillance that they forget to check for the obvious stuff, like a guy floating outside your window listening to every word you say. His enhanced hearing picked up the entire conspiracy from 500 feet away. Now he walks slowly along the table, his boots leaving footprints on the expensive wood as 30 of the most powerful people on Tertius shrink back in their seats. You were going to hire mercenary. Contact the Inquisition. Plot against me. He stops in front of Director Hellstrom, and you can see your own terrified reflection in those cold blue eyes. In my old world, I had to pretend to care what people thought, had to maintain my image, but here I can finally be honest. His hand moves faster than you can track, grabbing the woman sitting next to you. I don't need your approval. I don't need your cooperation. I just need you to obey. What happens next will be censored from official records, but everyone in that room will remember it until their dying day. Homelander makes an example, not a quick death, not a merciful execution, but a drawn-out demonstration of exactly how powerless they all are. When it's over, 29 conspirators remain alive, their clothes soaked with someone else's blood, their minds shattered by what they've witnessed. Homelander stands among them, completely clean despite the carnage, and speaks with the patience of a teacher addressing particularly slow students. Here's the new rule. You work for me, your factories, your trade routes, your accumulated wealth, all of it serves my interest now. In exchange, I won't kill you. I won't kill your families. I'll even protect this planet from external threats because I'm not a monster. I'm just the guy in charge, and if you ever forget that again, I won't be this forgiving. He flies out the way he came in, leaving them sitting in silence, broken only by quiet sobbing. The transformation is complete. Within 72 hours, Homelander has shifted from false messiah to open tyrant. His patrols over the Hive become more aggressive, more territorial. He stops pretending to care about the people he saves, treating civilians like possessions rather than charges. When an orc raiding party attacks the eastern Hive sectors, he does repel them, but carelessly, his heat vision cutting through Xenos and humans alike because precision requires caring about collateral damage. When a fire breaks out in the manufacturing district, he appears not to help but to watch, hovering above the flames with his arms crossed until someone below explicitly begs him to intervene. Then and only then does he act, making it clear that every mercy is a gift he chooses to bestow. The cult of personality shifts accordingly. Those who still worship him do so with the fervor of hostages praising their captor, desperate to stay on his good side, and those who resist learn quickly that resistance is futile, because in the end, Homelander has learned the fundamental truth of Warhammer 40k. Power isn't about being loved, it's about being inevitable. The Imperium's response comes from orbit like the wrath of ancient gods. 3 Imperial Navy vessels translate from the warp at the edge of the Tertius system, a lunar-class cruiser and 2 escort frigates, their hulls bearing the scars of centuries of warfare. Admiral Constans commands the flotilla from his throne aboard the Righteous Deliverance, a man who has prosecuted compliance actions on dozens of rebellious worlds. His orders are explicit: reclaim Tertius, or reduce it to ash. The administratum has decided that one planet isn't worth the precedent of allowing a rogue superhuman to overthrow Imperial authority. Constance reviews the tactical data with grim satisfaction. Homelander might be invulnerable on the ground, but even gods die when you burn the ground they stand on. The Admiral issues his orders with the casual brutality of someone who has ended billions of lives. Prepare for orbital bombardment. Target all major population centers. Authorization code Ultima Sanction confirmed. Homelander doesn't know what's coming until the first land strike hits. He's in the middle of another public appearance, standing on a platform while forced crowds cheer his name. When the sky splits open, a column of superheated light punches through the atmosphere with enough force to vaporize everything in a 3-mile radius. The platform, the crowd, the entire district gone in an instant, replaced by a crater of molten glass. Homelander, floating at the epicenter, emerges from the thermal bloom completely unharmed but furious. His enhanced vision tracks the beam's trajectory upward, piercing through clouds and atmosphere to see the Imperial vessels in orbit. They're so far away they look like distant stars. For a moment he considers the problem. He can't breathe in space. He's powerful but still fundamentally biological, can't fly faster than light, can't survive indefinitely without air. The ships are unreachable, which means for the first time since arriving in this universe, Homelander faces an enemy he cannot immediately retaliate against. The bombardment continues with mechanical precision. Lance batteries and macro cannons rain destruction across Hive Tertius, targeting the administrative centers, the factories, the population districts where Homelander's unwilling subjects live and die. Admiral Constance watches the destruction through ocular feeds, his expression neutral. This is standard procedure for dealing with rebellious worlds. You don't negotiate with heretics, you burn them. The fact that billions of loyal Imperial citizens will die alongside the traitors is regrettable but acceptable. The Imperium measures morality in mathematics. Losing one world to preserve a million is sound doctrine, but Constance didn't account for one variable. He assumed Homelander would try to save people, that his hero complex would force him to spread himself thin protecting multiple targets. Instead, Homelander does something the Admiral doesn't expect. He flies straight up, not to help, not to defend, to escape, because if staying means dying uselessly under orbital fire, then Homelander chooses survival, always. But something stops him at the edge of the atmosphere, not physical barriers. The air simply thins until his lungs struggle, his biology hitting its limits as oxygen becomes scarce. Homelander hovers there watching the bombardment below, feeling the first genuine helplessness he's experienced since gaining his powers. Down on Tertius, millions are dying. The people who worshipped him, the people who feared him, the people he claimed dominion over, they're being annihilated while he floats uselessly in the thermosphere, and there's nothing he can do about it. No amount of strength helps when the enemy is beyond reach. No speed matters when you can't breathe where you need to go. For the first time, Homelander understands what the Imperium truly is. Not just powerful, not just cruel, impossibly vast. They can afford to destroy an entire world just to eliminate one threat. They operate on scales that make individual power meaningless. and that realization breaks something fundamental in his psychology. The screaming in the warp begins as Homelander's rage reaches critical mass. Psychers across 3 sectors suddenly convulse, their third eyes bleeding as they perceive something impossible happening in the Imperium. Raw emotion, unfiltered and absolute, pouring into the warp without being channeled through a psychic mind. Homelander isn't a psyker. He has no warp presence, no connection to the Imperium. But his fury is so pure, so concentrated that reality itself begins to thin around him. In the depths of the warp, in the impossible palaces where gods play games with mortal lives, something notices. Khorne the blood god feels this rage and finds it delicious. Sitsench, the architect of fate, perceives an anomaly that doesn't fit predicted patterns. Nurgle senses despair beneath the anger, and Slaanesh tastes the narcissistic pride that fuels it all. For the first time since Homelander arrived in Warhammer 40k, Chaos takes interest, not to destroy him, to claim him. You are Epistolary Corvus, a librarian of the Blood Ravens chapter, and you're monitoring warp currents when you feel it. A wound in reality forming above Tertius. It's not a standard warp incursion, those you've handled hundreds of times. This is something else, a consciousness so powerful, so emotionally volatile, that it's creating psychic feedback despite having no psychic abilities itself. It shouldn't be possible. Psychic phenomena require warp-sensitive minds. But you're watching the impossible happen in real time, cosmic laws bending around this Homelander entity. You send an urgent astropathic message to your chapter master, your psychic voice cutting through the warp with desperate clarity. Chaos, corruption imminent. Subject 0 Alpha displays unprecedented warp interaction. Recommend immediate quarantine and purgation. But even as you send the warning, you know it's too late. The dark gods don't miss opportunities like this. A being of immense power with catastrophic emotional instability. That's not a threat to chaos. That's a recruitment opportunity. The first whisper comes as Homelander floats at the atmospheric boundary, watching his stolen empire burn. It's not a voice exactly, more like thoughts that aren't his own.
Recognize this as external influence because it perfectly mirrors his own thoughts. The whisper continues, offering solutions. You can't reach them in orbit, but I can show you how to make them feel pain. Real pain. The kind that echoes forever. Images flood his mind. Rituals, symbols, powers that operate outside physical laws, ways to hurt people that transcend distance and protection. All he has to do is want it badly enough. Accept that the universe owes him this revenge. Embrace the rage completely. Homelander doesn't realize he's making a choice. He thinks he's just finally understanding how this universe works. That power here isn't just physical, it's will made manifest. The ritual is simple because Khorne doesn't require complexity, just blood and rage. The ritual's simple because Khorne doesn't require complexity, just blood and rage. Inens unen words the encenterverse. Inens and simplicines just finally understempus interverse. Homelander descends back to Tertius's surface, into the burning ruins of a Hab district where thousands died screaming. He stands in the ash of their corpses and does something he's never done before. He kneels, not in submission, but in concentration. His hands dig into the ground still warm from orbital fire, and he focuses every ounce of his hatred toward the ships in orbit. He doesn't pray.
Homelander doesn't pray to anyone, but he wills destruction with such absolute conviction that the warp responds. In orbit, aboard the Righteous Deliverance, Admiral Constance suddenly clutches his chest. His heart, which has beaten for 93 years through combat and augmentation, simply stops. No medical reason, no logical cause, it just stops, because Homelander wanted it to stop. The Admiral's last thought before darkness claims him is confusion. Then on the escort frigate Vigilant, the captain's head explodes. Then the Master of Ordnance on the cruiser. One by one the commanding officers of the flotilla die, their deaths mystifying their crews. And on the surface, Homelander stands with blood running from his nose, grinning like a madman, finally understanding that in Warhammer 40k there are weapons even stronger than strength. The change in Homelander is visible to anyone with eyes to see. His perfect suit, once pristine blue and red, now bears stains that won't wash away, not dirt or blood but something deeper, like reality itself is rejecting his presence. His eyes, formerly clear blue, occasionally flash with colors that shouldn't exist, hues that hurt to perceive and linger in memory like traumatic wounds. But the most disturbing change is his smile. It's still perfect, still white and symmetrical, but now it carries an edge of genuine madness. The narcissistic rage has found a channel, and chaos has provided the tools. Homelander doesn't understand what's happening to him, doesn't recognize the corruption seeping into his soul like poison into water. He just knows he feels more powerful than ever before, more righteous in his anger, more justified in everything he's about to do. The whispers have become constant companions, validating every dark impulse, encouraging every atrocity. The surviving Imperial ships withdraw, their command structure shattered, their crews terrified of an enemy who can kill across vacuum without weapons. The news reaches Lord Inquisitor Covenant within hours, and for the first time in his 300-year career, he feels genuine dread. The reports make no sense within established doctrine. Homelander has no psychic signature, registers as completely mundane to all warp-sensitive detection methods, yet he's somehow channeling power that operates identically to chaos sorcery. Covenant convenes an emergency meeting with his most trusted advisors, and the consensus is unanimous and horrifying. They're watching something unprecedented, a being powerful enough to affect the warp through sheer emotional intensity, without actually being a psyker. The implications are catastrophic. If this is replicable, if other beings could learn to touch chaos without traditional psychic talent, then the entire Imperial doctrine of managing warp threats becomes obsolete. They're not fighting corruption anymore, they're fighting evolution. Hive Tertius descends into hell, but it's a strangely organized hell. Homelander establishes his rule through systematic terror, dividing the population into categories based on usefulness and obedience. Factory workers who meet quotas are left alone. Administrative personnel who process his demands efficiently receive protection, but anyone who resists, who questions, who even looks at him with insufficient reverence, they disappear. Sometimes their bodies are found arranged in patterns that make psychically sensitive individuals nauseous to observe. Sometimes they simply vanish, their existence erased so completely that even memories of them become hazy. This is chaos, corruption at work, reality warping around Homelander's will, but he still thinks it's just him getting better. Luling. The population doesn't riot. They're too terrified. They work, they obey,
They mouth prayers to the Emperor while secretly offering devotion to the monster who owns them, because at least the monster is predictable. At least his cruelty has rules you can learn. You are Sister Heliana of the Order's Hospitaller, and you've spent your life serving the poor and wounded in the Emperor's name. Your faith has sustained you through plagues and wars, through seeing children die, and families torn apart. But nothing prepared you for this. You run a Medicae station in the lower hive, treating casualties from Homelander's increasingly erratic peacekeeping operations. The injuries you see violate medical possibility, burns that continue burning hours after initial contact, wounds that refuse to heal despite proper treatment, patients who scream about colors and sounds that don't exist. These aren't just physical injuries, they're metaphysical contamination, warp taint seeping into flesh through exposure to Homelander's presence. You try to help them, offering prayers and Medicae attention, but some wounds transcend medicine. Some corruption can't be cleansed with faith alone. You watch a child die despite your best efforts, his small body rejecting treatment, and you realize with crushing certainty that this planet is already lost, not to conquest, to damnation. The cults emerge inevitably, like infections following a wound, not the organized chaos cults that the Inquisition usually hunts, but spontaneous worship of Homelander himself. In the deep hive levels where imperial authority never truly reached, shrines appear overnight, crude altars bearing his symbols surrounded by offerings both mundane and horrific. Some worshippers cut themselves, letting blood pool at his image's feet. Others compose prayers that hurt to hear, words and languages nobody taught them but everyone somehow understands. The Ecclesiarchy's attempts to suppress these cults fail catastrophically, because Homelander doesn't care if people worship him as a god or a daemon. He just wants worship. The distinction between loyal imperial citizen and chaos cultist blurs completely. You can praise the Emperor and Homelander simultaneously. You can serve both masters, until the moment comes when you must choose, and everyone always chooses survival over principle, always. Deep in the warp in the brass throne room where reality bleeds and screams sound like music, Khorne watches Homelander's transformation with interest. The blood god doesn't grant favors lightly, but this mortal has potential, so much rage, so much pride, so much delicious violence waiting to be unleashed. Khorne extends an offer through the veil between dimensions, a proposition whispered into Homelander's mind during his moments of greatest fury. Become my champion. Accept my gifts fully. Let me elevate you beyond mortality into true divinity. The offer is seductive because it promises what Homelander's always wanted: absolute supremacy, unquestionable power, eternal relevance. But even in his corrupted state, some part of him hesitates. Becoming someone's champion, serving anyone, even a god, means admitting he's not self-sufficient, means acknowledging authority above himself, and Homelander's core pathology, the narcissism that defines his entire existence, rebels against that. He wants the power, just not the servitude, so he takes what chaos offers, and gives nothing back, stealing from gods themselves. The Inquisition's final gambit arrives in the form of Titan, not a small scouting force or single company, but a full battle group, an Imperator-class Titan, a walking cathedral of destruction standing 300 feet tall, accompanied by 2 Warlord-class Titans, and supporting Knight squadrons. These are humanity's greatest weapons, god machines that have broken sieges and toppled hive cities. The Legio Invicta deploys with absolute confidence. Their princeps veterans of 1,000 battles. They establish position in the wastes outside Hive Tertius, their void shields shimmering in the toxic air, their weapons charged and ready. Princeps Majora, mind linked to the Imperator Titan Dies Era, broadcasts a challenge across all frequencies. False prophet, face humanity's wrath. The challenge is tactical bait. If Homelander engages, they'll have clear firing solutions. If he doesn't, they'll level the entire hive from range. Either way, this ends today. What they don't know is that Homelander has been waiting for exactly this. An enemy impressive enough to destroy publicly. A statement victory that will prove his divinity beyond question. The battle begins at dawn. And it's like watching physics fight mythology. The Titans open fire with plasma destructors, volcano cannons, and apocalypse missile launchers, weapons designed to kill other Titans and level fortifications. The firepower is biblical, each shot carrying megatons of explosive force. Homelander flies through the bombardment like a storm, weaving between plasma blasts that superheat the air to thousands of degrees. Heat vision lances out in response, carving through void shields that protect against starship weapons. The shields hold at first, generators straining as they redistribute impossible amounts of energy. Then Homelander adds something new. That warp-touched power he's been developing will made manifest. Reality bends around his attacks, the heat vision now carrying a psychic edge that bypasses physical protection. Void shields fail, armor melts, inside dies Ara. Princeps Majora feels her Titan scream through their neural link, feels its pain as if it were her own flesh burning. She pushes the god machine harder, firing everything simultaneously in a desperate alpha strike. And for a moment, just a moment, it seems like it might work. Then Homelander lands on the Titan's head, and starts tearing it apart with his bare hands.
The Imperator Titan Dies Irae has walked for 6,000 years, its machine spirit ancient and proud, its war record carved into every plate of blessed adamantium. It has killed daemon princes and crushed enemy titans beneath its colossal feet. Its weapons have reduced cities to ash and broken the backs of alien invasions, but it has never faced anything like Homelander. The corrupted superhuman tears through the Titan's armor, plating with hands that glow with unnatural heat, metal screaming as it's peeled away like skin from fruit. Inside the command deck, Prince Majora fights to maintain neural sync, even as feedback from the Titan's agony threatens to liquefy her brain. Warning klaxons wail, damage reports scrolling faster than human eyes can process. The Moderati crew desperately reroute power, trying to shake off the parasite destroying their god machine. But Homelander has found the Titan's reactor housing, the plasma core that powers this cathedral of war. His smile is visible through the torn armor, that perfect white grin now edged with something that might be ecstasy or madness. Then he punches straight through the reactor shielding. The explosion should kill everything within a mile radius. Plasma reactors contain the fury of captured stars, their detonation equivalent to low-yield nuclear weapons. The blast wave tears across the wasteland, vaporizing the supporting knights instantly and sending both warlord titans staggering backward. The shock wave hits Hive Tertius like a physical wall, shattering windows and collapsing weaker structures. The mushroom cloud rises high enough to be visible from orbit, a pillar of fire and smoke that seems to reach toward the void itself. For 3 full seconds, everyone watching assumes Homelander died. Even gods can't survive reactor detonation at ground zero. Then the smoke clears, and he's still there, still floating. His suit is gone, vaporized completely, leaving him naked and exposed. But his skin is unmarked, not burned, not even scorched. He hangs in the air above the crater where D's Iri stood, surrounded by falling ash and cooling radiation, laughing, not the calculated laugh of a villain, the genuine, unhinged laughter of someone who just proved they're unkillable, who just confirmed their own divinity through trial by nuclear fire. The remaining warlord titans don't retreat. Their machine spirits won't allow it, honor protocols overriding survival instinct. They advance through the radiation-soaked wasteland, their weapons charging for one final assault. Princeps Kaldor, commanding Sanguine Fury, knows this is suicide. His strategic training screams at him to fall back, preserve assets, report this impossibility to higher command. But he's been linked to his Titan for 40 years, their minds so intertwined that its rage becomes his rage. The God Machine demands vengeance for its fallen brother, and Kaldor lacks the strength to deny it. Both warlords fire simultaneously, plasma annihilators, turbo laser destructors, mega bolters, everything they have focused on one target. The firepower would destroy a fortress. Homelander flies straight into it, not dodging, not evading, but accelerating toward the attack like a missile seeking impact. He hits Sanguine Fury at supersonic speed, punching clean through the Titan's torso armor and out the other side, leaving a tunnel large enough to fly through. The God Machine stands for one confused moment, then collapses like a puppet with severed strings. You are Moderati Secundus Vex, stationed in the second Warlord Titan Wrath Eternal, and you're about to die. You've known this for the last 30 seconds, ever since Homelander destroyed Sanguine Fury and turned his attention toward your Titan. Your Princeps is shouting orders, your fellow crew members working desperately to target the impossible enemy, but you've disconnected from your station. Not out of cowardice, you've served loyally for 2 decades, but out of acceptance. This is how the story ends. Not in glory against Xeno's hordes or Daemon armies, but crushed by a single flying man, who has become something worse than either. You think about your family back on your home world, about the children who think their father is a hero piloting a God Machine. You hope they never learn the truth, that their father died helplessly, that the God Machine was just a machine after all, and gods bow to nothing but greater gods. Homelander lands on Wrath Eternal's head, and everything goes dark. The silence after the battle is total. 3 Titans reduced to scrap metal, their crews dead, their machine spirits finally quieted. Homelander stands atop the wreckage like a conqueror, surveying his kingdom, naked and unashamed, his body unmarked, despite exposure to enough firepower to level continents. But something is wrong. He can feel it even if he doesn't understand it. His thoughts are no longer entirely his own, contaminated by whispers that have become voices, suggestions that have become commands. The warp power he's been using comes with a price, and chaos always collects. His skin begins to change, not obviously, not overtly, but in subtle ways that mark him as something other than human. His muscles restructure, becoming denser, harder, moving toward the perfect killing efficiency that Korn favors. His eyes, once human blue, now carry flecks of brass that catch the light like metal shavings. He doesn't notice these changes. The corruption is insidious, rewriting him from the inside out, making him believe every transformation is just him becoming more perfect, more divine, more what he was always meant to be. Lord Inquisitor Covenant watches the battle footage from orbit, his aged face expressionless as he processes what he's witnessing. 3 god machines destroyed by a single entity. Conventional warfare has failed completely. Exotic weapons have failed. Even psychic assault has proven ineffective, because Homelander isn't conventionally psychic. He's something worse. A bridge between the materium and immaterium that operates on rules nobody understands. Covenant makes a decision that will haunt him until his dying day. He drafts an exterminatus order, formal documentation requesting complete planetary annihilation. 2-way cyclonic torpedoes, virus bombs, atmospheric incinerators, the full destructive capacity of the Imperium brought to bear on Tertius and everyone living on it. Billions of Imperial citizens will die, their souls added to the Emperor's great ledger of necessary sacrifices. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is letting this corruption spread, letting Homelander become a model for others who might walk the same path. Sometimes Covenant knows the only way to save the Imperium is to destroy everything that threatens it, even innocents, even entire worlds. But the Order never transmits. As Covenant prepares to encode the exterminatus authorization, every system on his black ship fails simultaneously. Lights die, cogitators go dark, life support stutters and catches. In the sudden darkness, illuminated only by emergency luminators, Covenant hears something that freezes his blood. Laughter. Homelander's laughter, transmitted through dead Vox systems, bypassing all physical limitations. The voice echoes through the ship's corridors, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Did you really think you could kill me with bombs? I've survived nuclear fire. I've walked through plasma death. Your exterminatus is just a bigger explosion. The voice carries a psychic weight that makes Covenant's skin crawl, reality bending around the words. But I appreciate the effort, shows respect. So here's my counteroffer. Leave, take your ships, your soldiers, your Inquisition, and go somewhere else. Because Tertius is mine now, and if you try to take it, I'll do to your fleet what I did to those Titans. I'll board every ship, kill every crew, and I'll do it while smiling. The threat isn't empty bravado. Covenant knows this with certainty born from 3 centuries of judging threats. Homelander has evolved beyond merely physical danger into something that can project power across vacuum, kill through will alone, and corrupt reality through sheer emotional intensity. Fighting him conventionally would just create more martyrs, more demonstration of his power, more fuel for the growing cult. The Inquisitor makes the hardest choice of his career. He orders the withdrawal, not retreat. The Imperium doesn't retreat. Strategic repositioning, quarantine protocols. Tertius will be marked as Perdita, a lost world, its coordinates scrubbed from official navigation records. Any ship that approaches will be destroyed without warning. The planet will become a prison for Homelander and everyone trapped with him, sealed away until the Imperium can devise a solution, or until chaos consumes him completely and solves the problem through demonic excess. Either way, Covenant decides. Tertius is dead. It just doesn't know it yet. And as his ships translate into the warp, leaving the planet behind, he whispers a prayer for the souls condemned to live under the rule of a false god who thinks he's become the real thing. 6 months pass. Tertius remains isolated, a quarantined world spinning silently in the void, cut off from the greater Imperium by decree and firepower. No ships arrive, no traders, no pilgrims, no military planet has been excised from humanity's galactic body like a cancerous organ, sealed away to rot in isolation. And on the surface, Homelander rules absolutely. His empire of ash and blood extends across every hive, every settlement, every desperate cluster of humanity clinging to survival on this poisoned world. He has everything he ever claimed to want: complete authority, unquestioned power, subjects who obey his every whim. But as he floats above his conquered domain, watching the factory smoke rise into toxic skies, he feels something he's never experienced before: emptiness. Not the narcissistic injury of insufficient worship, but genuine, crushing emptiness, because he's finally achieved total domination, and it feels like nothing at all. The hives still function, but they're changed. Production continues in the factories, not driven by imperial ties, but by Homelander's arbitrary demands. He doesn't understand logistics or resource management, has no concept of sustainable governance. He just wants things, and people scramble to provide them or die trying. The population has dropped by 40%, some killed in the initial fighting, others dead from the collapse of supply chains, many more simply vanishing into the ruins, where even Homelander's attention doesn't reach. Those who remain exist in a strange limbo between survival and damnation. They work, they eat, they sleep, but they no longer live in any meaningful sense. The spirit has been crushed out of them, replaced by hollow obedience, and the numb acceptance that comes from witnessing too much horror. They pray to the Emperor in whispers, knowing their prayers go nowhere. They praise Homelander in public, knowing their praise means nothing to him anymore. You are Sergeant Matthias Cord, and you're one of the few guardsmen who survived Homelander's arrival 6 months ago. You stopped being a soldier the day you dropped your last gun and ran, but you're still breathing, which is more than most can say. You've watched your world transform from an oppressive imperial hive into something indescribably worse. At least under the Imperium, the cruelty had structure. You knew the rules, however brutal. You understood what was expected, even if those expectations ground you into dust. But Homelander's rule is capricious, unpredictable, driven entirely by his mood on any given day. He might save a district from a collapsing infrastructure purely because someone there complimented his appearance. He might immolate an entire hab block because a child there started crying when he appeared. There's no logic, no pattern, just the whims of a god who never learned how to be human, suddenly granted absolute authority over millions who have no choice but to pretend he's benevolent. Sister Heliana still runs her Medicae station, though her faith has been tested beyond any breaking point known to the ecclesiarchy. She no longer prays to the Emperor for deliverance. Those prayers were answered with silence. She no longer hopes for imperial rescue. 6 months of isolation have made that fantasy laughable. Instead, she focuses on what she can control: bandaging wounds, treating infections, offering comfort to the dying. Her Medicae supplies dwindle daily, irreplaceable without off-world trade, and she knows within another month she'll have nothing left to work with except clean water and prayer. The injuries she treats have evolved too. Fewer combat wounds now, more industrial accidents as safety standards collapse, more malnutrition, more disease as sanitation infrastructure fails, and always, the strange warp-touched afflictions that mark those who've been too close to Homelander for too long. Skin that bruises without cause, eyes that bleed colors, minds that fracture under the weight of exposure to something reality itself rejects. Homelander doesn't notice the decay. He stopped paying attention to the details of his empire, consumed instead by his own psychological unraveling. The chaos corruption has progressed beyond physical changes into something far more insidious. It's rewriting his memories, his sense of self, his understanding of what he is. He remembers his life before Tertius differently now. Remembers being more powerful, more respected, more loved than he actually was. The whispers from the warp have become his internal monologue, and he can no longer distinguish between his own thoughts and the suggestions bleeding through from the Imperium. Sometimes he looks at his reflection and sees a man. Sometimes he sees something else, brass and blood and fury given form. Both versions feel true. Both feel like him. And that cognitive dissonance, that fracturing of identity, is exactly what chaos feeds on. He's becoming a daemon prince without realizing it, losing his humanity one thought at a time, each loss making the next one easier. The cults have evolved too, fragmenting into competing sects that worship different aspects of their god-tyrant. Some venerate Homelander as savior, clinging desperately to memories of when he first arrived and defeated the Orcs. Others worship Homelander as destroyer, offering blood sacrifices to appease his wrath. A third faction has emerged, cultists who believe Homelander is a test sent by the Emperor, and their suffering under his rule is purgation of sin. Each sect commits atrocities in his name, interpreting his casual cruelties as divine commandments. Homelander doesn't intervene, doesn't care about the distinctions between his worshippers. He just absorbs their devotion like a black hole, absorbs light, consuming everything and returning nothing. And in the warp, Khorne watches this slow-motion daemonic ascension with satisfaction. This mortal who tried to steal power without offering service is learning the fundamental truth: chaos always wins. You can't take from the dark gods without giving in return. The bill always comes due. Deep in the Underhive, where even Homelander's attention rarely reaches, a resistance forms. Not a military resistance. Those were crushed in the first month, but something more subtle. Remembrance. Old women who gather children and tell them stories of what Tertius was before the tyrant came. Not propaganda about imperial glory, but honest memories of simple lives. Working hard, but having purpose. Struggling but having community. Suffering but having hope that service might mean something. These stories are acts of rebellion now, preserving the memory that there was once something other than Homelander's rule. The children listen, not understanding entirely, but absorbing the subversive truth that the current order isn't eternal, that gods can arrive, which means gods can leave, or die, or simply be forgotten when everyone who remembers them passes away. It's a resistance measured in generations, utterly futile against an immortal tyrant, but it's resistance nonetheless. The last spark of humanity, refusing to be extinguished even in absolute darkness. Homelander floats at the edge of the atmosphere, staring up at the stars he can't reach. 6 months ago, he thought conquering a planet would prove his supremacy. Thought being worshipped would fill the emptiness inside him. But he's learned the cruelest truth of all: power without challenge is meaningless. Victory without struggle offers no satisfaction. Worship extracted through terror carries no validation. He's become the absolute ruler of a dying world, and it feels exactly like being alone. The Imperium abandoned Tertius without a fight, which means they don't consider him worth fighting. The Chaos Gods whisper promises, but offer no genuine companionship, just eternal servitude disguised as partnership. His subjects fear him, but cannot love him, worship him but cannot know him, He has achieved everything he claimed to want, and discovered that everything isn't enough. It will never be enough, because the hole inside Homelander, the fundamental emptiness that drove him to seek power in the first place, cannot be filled by external validation. And in Warhammer 40k, in this universe built on endless grinding suffering, he's finally found a hell perfectly suited to his particular damnation. Eternal power, eternal worship, eternal crushing loneliness, forever.